Chapter 25, Bloodlines Broken. The hunters did not announce their escalation. They never did. There were no declarations, no ultimatums delivered through shadowed intermediaries, no warning shots meant to frighten rather than kill. Hunters understood something older than law and deeper than morality. Surprise was not a tactic, it was doctrine. They moved in layers. First came financial pressure, accounts that had existed for centuries. Vampire shell corporations disguised as shipping firms, medical research foundations, private equity funds were frozen overnight. Legal challenges followed within hours, airtight and relentless. Warrants appeared from nowhere, backed by judges who did not remember signing them. Then came information disruption. Encrypted networks went dark. Dead drops were compromised. Long-standing human allies, mayors, police captains, port authorities, received quiet visits reminding them of debts they had forgotten they owed. Only then did force begin to surface. By the time the supernatural world felt the hunters closing in, the net was already tightening, drawn with precision, patience, and an intimate understanding of immortal behavior. And at the center of that net stood Daniel Mercer. Not a king, not yet a god, but something infinitely more dangerous. A fulcrum. The first sign did not come from wards, nor from prophecy, nor from the whispering echoes that haunted Mercer's dreams. Came from silence. No drone hums drifted along the treeline where hunters usually tested perimeter defenses. No electronic interference rippled against the hollow's outer sigils. No probing, no friction, no irritation that would trigger alarms. Even the subtle pressure Mercer had come to recognize, a faint psychic weight pressing against the edges of his awareness, was gone. It was as if the hunters had ceased to exist. Daniel Mercer stood at the edge of the standing stones, arms folded across his chest, his breath fogging the cold morning air. The mountain forest lay shrouded in mist, thick and low, swallowing the world in pale gray. Pines loomed like specters, their outlines blurred, their roots buried deep in secrets older than human memory. Something about the quiet felt wrong. Not peaceful, predatory. "They're too quiet," Mercer said at last, his voice carrying softly between the stones. Rashad stood beside him, massive frame unmoving, arms relaxed but ready. Even in his human form, the werewolf king radiated power, coiled strength barely restrained beneath skin and bone. His golden eyes scanned the fog, nostrils flaring subtly. "Predators do not go silent unless they are close," Rashad said, "or unless they are finished hunting." Mercer frowned. "Which do you think it is?" Rashad's lips curled faintly, not a smile. "Neither." Footsteps crunched softly behind them. Elena Vasquez emerged from the mist, crimson coat stark against the gray world. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, exposing the elegant severity of her features. Her eyes were unfocused, pupils dilated, not seeing the forest so much as listening to it. "They've stopped probing," she said. "No false incursions, no distractions, no attempts to trigger our defenses." Mercer exhaled slowly. "Which means they've chosen a single objective." Elena stopped beside him. Her gaze locked onto his face with unsettling intensity. "You," she said. The word carried weight. Mercer didn't argue. He'd felt it too, the subtle alignment of pressure around him, like gravity shifting just enough to notice. The seal within him pulsed faintly, not in alarm, but in recognition. "They're done testing the perimeter," Mercer said quietly. "They've decided the perimeter doesn't matter." Rashad's jaw tightened. "They believe removing you collapses everything." Elena's eyes darkened. "They may not be wrong." 300 miles away, far from the mountain and its ancient stones, the hunters gathered beneath reinforced concrete and holy iron. The chamber was stripped of all ornamentation. No banners, no religious symbols, no oaths carved into the walls. Only function. The air was cool, recycled, faintly tinged with antiseptic and ozone. The lights were harsh and unforgiving, revealing every scar, every hardened expression around the steel table. Commander Miriam Hale stood at its center, both hands braced against the surface. She had not slept. None of them had. Years of warfare against creatures of myth had etched discipline into her posture and something colder into her eyes. 12 figures sat around the table, Men and women who had spent their lives erasing monsters from history. Veterans of wars no one acknowledged. Executioners whose names would never appear in records. On the central display hovered a single designation, pulsing softly in stark white text. Target: Mercer. Daniel. Classification: Existential anomaly. Status: Priority Omega. Silence pressed down on the room. Halvorsen broke it. "Ashfall has failed," she said, voice precise, clinical. "Containment has failed. Remote nullification has failed." She gestured, and footage flickered across the screen. Mercer standing at the center of a collapsing sigil lattice, energy bending around him, obeying him. "The seal responds to him," Halvorsen continued. "Not to force, not to command, to intent." Hale's jaw tightened. "Then we remove him." A murmur rippled through the chamber. "Alive?" one hunter asked, fingers drumming against the table. Hale hesitated only a fraction of a second. "But it was enough." "Preferably," she said. Halvorsen leaned forward, eyes sharp. "And if not?" Hale did not look away. "Then we end the lock permanently, before Dracula uses it." A younger hunter shifted uneasily in his chair. "You're talking about provoking a war with every faction at once." Halvorsen's expression hardened. "The war has been ongoing for centuries. We're simply stepping back onto the board." She tapped the display, and new schematics appeared: logistics routes, safe houses, financial nodes. "Mercer is not the king," Halvorsen continued. "He's the keystone. Remove him and the alliances collapse. Vampires turn inward. Werewolves fracture. Dracula loses leverage. And if he doesn't?" The younger hunter pressed. Hale's voice dropped. "Then we learn what the world looks like without a lock." She straightened. "Operation Nightfall begins now." The hunters did not storm the hollow. Storms were noisy. Storms warned the prey. Instead, they went around it. The first fires burned in cities far from the mountain. Financial headquarters seized under emergency injunctions. Private clinics raided. Cargo ships detained. Vampire-aligned enterprises, carefully disguised over decades, collapsed within hours. Then came the disappearances. Werewolf supply lines went dark. Couriers failed to arrive. Trusted human intermediaries vanished, later found broken and bleeding, memories carved open by interrogation spells. And then came the snipers. 3 vampire sentinels fell within the first hour. Holy rounds punched through ancient flesh with brutal efficiency, pinning them to stone before alarms could sound. The kills were clean, precise, done by hunters who knew exactly how fast a vampire could move and how to stay ahead of it. A werewolf scout vanished near the northern ridge. 2 days later, his body was found nailed to a tree, dissected with surgical care. Sigils were carved into his bones. Symbols meant not just to kill, but to send a message. Mercer felt each death like a tightening coil around his chest. Not pain, pressure. The seal reacted to loss the way a structure reacted to stress. Subtle shifts, micro-adjustments. "They're forcing reactions," Mercer said, pacing the chamber beneath the mountain. His hands flexed restlessly. "Every strike pulls someone out of position." Voss stood near the far wall, staff in hand, ancient eyes grave. "They are isolating you." Elena slammed her fist into the stone wall. The impact cracked marble, fissures racing outward like veins. "They think I'll abandon you," she said, voice sharp with fury. "That I'll choose my kind over balance." Her eyes glowed faintly crimson, power bleeding through restraint. "They have misunderstood me." Rashad stepped closer to her, voice low. "They want you to prove them right." Elena laughed softly, cold and humorless. "Then they will be disappointed." The hunter's trap was elegant in its cruelty. Not a bomb, not an ambush, a story. A single transmission slipped through channels the vampires knew Mercer monitored. Old police frequencies, encrypted civilian bands, places Mercer's instincts still checked out of habit. The feed stabilized. A warehouse interior flickered into view. 3 humans knelt on a concrete floor, hands bound behind their backs. They were bruised, bloodied, but alive. The lighting was harsh, deliberately unflattering. Mercer recognized the place instantly. An old narcotics hub, He'd worked a dozen busts their back when his world was smaller and simpler. One of the captives lifted his head and looked directly into the camera. "Daniel Mercer," the man said, voice shaking. "They said you'd come." The feed cut. Silence swallowed the chamber. Rashad's growl rumbled low in his chest. "It's a lie." Mercer's fists clenched so tightly his knuckles whitened. "Maybe, but they chose people I know." Elena stepped closer, her presence sharp and commanding. "You are not going alone," she said, voice iron-hard. Mercer met her gaze. "I wasn't planning to." The seal pulsed faintly, and far beneath the world, ancient chains creaked softly, as something old and patient listened, amused by how perfectly the board was being set. The warehouse sat dead at the edge of the industrial district, a concrete carcass surrounded by rusted fencing and forgotten rail spurs. Sodium lights flickered overhead, casting jaundiced halos through the mist. To most of the city, it was just another abandoned structure. To Mercer, it was memory. He crouched on a nearby rooftop, the night air cold against his skin, eyes locked on the building below. His heartbeat was slow, measured, too controlled for a man about to walk into a trap. "They've layered the approach," Rashad murmured beside him, nostrils flaring. "Multiple kill zones, snipers with fallback routes." Elena stood behind them, her presence almost unnervingly calm. Her coat moved gently in a breeze that didn't touch anything else. "I count at least 12, she said. "Human heartbeats, no supernatural signatures." Mercer swallowed. "They want this clean. They want you isolated," Elena corrected. "Alive if possible, broken if not." Mercer closed his eyes for a moment, reaching inward. The seal responded immediately. It did not speak, not in words, but he felt its awareness unfurl. The warehouse below resolved itself in his mind. Stress points, hollow spaces, places where violence had once pooled and never truly left. "They're underground too," Mercer said quietly. "Tunnels, old drainage. They'll try to separate us." Rashad bared his teeth. "Let them try." Elena's gaze lingered on Mercer. "Remember what we discussed. You do not give chase alone." Mercer nodded. "I won't." He dropped from the roof. The first shot came before Mercer's boots hit the ground. Holy silver screamed past his ear, shattering brick inches from his head. The impact burned, not physically but spiritually, a sharp resonance that made the seal recoil. Rashad moved instantly. He crossed the distance in a blur, leaping impossibly high, tearing the sniper from his perch and slamming him into the pavement hard enough to crater concrete. The hunter didn't even scream. His spine snapped on impact. Floodlights snapped on. The night exploded into chaos. Automatic fire stitched the air as hunters poured from concealed positions, their movements precise, rehearsed. They didn't panic. They didn't shout. They advanced. "Mercer!" Elena's voice cut through the gunfire. "Left flank." Mercer pivoted, raising his hands. The seal flared, not outward, inward. The ground beneath the advancing hunters buckled, concrete rippling like liquid stone. Men stumbled, fell, weapons skittering away as gravity twisted sideways for a heartbeat too long. Mercer staggered, pain lancing through his skull. "Easy," Elena warned, already moving. She blurred forward, red eyes blazing, tearing through the disoriented hunters with terrifying grace. Snapping necks, disarming rifles, leaving bodies broken but alive. "They're hurting us," Rashad roared. A thunderous boom erupted behind them. The warehouse doors collapsed inward as explosive charges detonated, smoke and fire rolling outward. Shapes moved within the haze. Hunters wearing reinforced armor etched with sigils designed to hurt things like Rashad and Elena. One of them raised a launcher. Mercer reacted without thinking. He reached. The projectile froze midair. Time seemed to hiccup, not stop, but hesitate. The rocket twisted, imploded, collapsing into itself in a flash of distorted space before dropping harmlessly to the ground. Every hunter froze. Every vampire felt it. Every werewolf howled in response. Elena stared at Mercer, awe and alarm warring in her expression. "You're bending it too fast," she said. Mercer gasped, blood trickling from his nose. "They don't have much time." Neither did he. Inside the warehouse, the air was stale and heavy, layered with decades of chemical residue, rust, and old blood that had never quite washed away. Every breath tasted wrong. Mercer felt it scrape the back of his throat, felt it settle into his lungs like a warning. He moved first, not because he wanted to, but because the seal insisted. His senses stretched outward in a way that no longer felt entirely voluntary. Sound separated itself into layers, footsteps above them deliberate, controlled. Breathing too measured to belong to captives. The faint electrical hum of active sigils hidden behind walls. And beneath it all, 3 heartbeats. Fast, shallow, terrified. "They're alive," Mercer said quietly, raising a hand as Rashad and Elena slowed behind him. For now, Rashad's nostrils flared. His shoulders rolled once, the motion subtle but unmistakable. His body preparing for violence. "I smell fear," he rumbled, "but I don't smell despair." Elena's gaze flicked toward Mercer. Which means they want me thinking I can still save someone," Mercer said. "Hope is the hook." They advanced deeper into the warehouse, boots crunching softly over gravel and broken glass. The lighting was dim, deliberately uneven. Shadows thick enough to hide movement, bright enough to disorient. Then Mercer felt it. Pressure shift. A wrongness in the air. "Stop," he said sharply. Too late. Sigils flared along the walls in blinding white arcs of ancient geometry. Symbols Mercer had seen before, but never layered like this. Containment runes, suppression arrays, anchors designed not to kill, but to hold. The seal inside him screamed, not in pain, in rage. Agony tore through Mercer's skull as invisible weight slammed down on him, forcing him to his knees. His vision went white, then red, then fractured into overlapping images as the sigils tightened, responding to the anomaly they had been built for. He screamed. Rashad lunged instinctively and slammed into an invisible barrier with bone-rattling force. Holy energy scorched across his skin, searing through muscle and nerve. He roared, the sound reverberating through the warehouse like thunder, for already bursting along his arms. Elena hissed as the light struck her, ancient wards burning against her flesh. She staggered back a step, eyes flashing crimson as she fought the containment's pull. "Well done," a calm voice said from the shadows. Footsteps echoed. A figure stepped forward into the light. Commander Miriam Hale. She wore no armor, no visible weapons, just a dark coat, immaculate and unmarked, and in her right hand, a small remote device with a single red switch. "Well done," Hale repeated mildly. "You came exactly as predicted." Mercer forced himself upright, teeth clenched so hard his jaw ached. Blood trickled from his nose, warm against his lips. "Let them go," he growled. Hale tilted her head, studying him like a specimen. "You misunderstand." The sigils pulsed brighter. They were never leverage. Mercer's heart dropped. The floor vanished beneath them. They fell, 30 feet straight down. Mercer hit first, the impact driving the breath from his lungs as he rolled across reinforced steel. Pain flared through his ribs, sharp, immediate, real. He barely had time to groan before Rashad landed beside him in a crouch, the concrete beneath his feet spiderwebbing from the force. Bones cracked loudly as Rashad shifted mid-landing, fur tearing through skin, muscle bulging and reforming. His eyes burned gold as his transformation accelerated, rage fueling the change. Elena descended more gracefully, twisting in the air, landing light as a shadow. But the moment her boots touched the floor, sigils embedded in the steel flared brighter. She hissed sharply, one knee dipping as the magic bit deep. This place was designed to hurt her. The chamber was massive, circular, reinforced, industrial, walls lined with recessed alcoves. Overhead lights snapped on in a blinding cascade. Hunters stepped out of the walls, dozens of them, armor etched with anti-supernatural glyphs, weapons humming with contained energy, faces hard, focused, unafraid. The captives were gone. Mercer forced himself to his feet, chest heaving. Hale's voice echoed from speakers embedded high above. "You see, Mercer," she said calmly, "this was never about saving lives." The lights intensified, flooding the pit in harsh white. "This was about measuring you." The hunters opened fire. The first wave hit like a storm. Rashad met them head-on. He tore through armored hunters with primal fury, claws ripping through reinforced plating, teeth snapping steel like brittle bone. Every movement was brutal and efficient, centuries of predatory instinct unleashed without restraint. Elena moved like living death. She blurred between hunters, crimson arcs flashing as she disarmed, incapacitated, and killed with terrifying precision. Blood splashed across the steel floor in elegant violence, her expression calm, almost serene. Mercer stood at the center of it all, frozen. The seal pushed, not commanded, demanded. He felt it then, not power but weight. Responsibility pressing down on him from every direction. Every action he took rippled outward. Every choice closed doors that could never be reopened. A hunter broke through Rashad's flank, blade raised. Mercer reacted. He caught the knife barehanded. The metal screamed. Rust bloomed across the blade in seconds, eating it away until it crumbled into flakes of orange dust. The hunter stared in horror as the weapon disintegrated between Mercer's fingers. What the? Mercer shoved him back, voice rising, resonant with something else beneath it. Enough, he shouted. Stand down. The sound echoed unnaturally, vibrating through bone and steel alike. Several hunters hesitated. Others didn't. One stepped forward, lifting a rune-charged rifle, its barrel glowing with contained annihilation. He leveled it at Mercer's chest and fired. Elena! Rashad roared. The round hit Mercer square in the sternum, and dissolved. Energy scattered like mist against an unseen barrier. The seal flared violently, burning white-hot beneath Mercer's skin. The air shattered. A shockwave tore outward from Mercer's body, slamming hunters into walls like ragdolls. Steel buckled. Lights exploded overhead. Sigils cracked, then failed, sparks raining down like dying stars. Mercer dropped to one knee, gasping, blood dripping from his mouth. Silence fell. Those hunters, still conscious, stared at Mercer. Not with hatred, with fear. A woman near the far wall, blood streaming from a gash in her temple, slowly lowered her weapon. He's not a monster, she whispered. Hale's voice snapped through the chamber. Do not hesitate. The woman hesitated anyway. Another hunter followed her lead. Then another. Elena stepped forward, blood spattered across her coat, eyes burning. You were told lies, she said calmly. You were told we are chaos. She gestured toward Mercer, kneeling at the center of the destruction. And yet he stands between worlds, holding them apart. Rashad growled softly, towering behind her. Choose. Hale descended from an upper platform, fury blazing in her eyes. She drew a concealed weapon and aimed it at Mercer's head. Stand down, she shouted. This is an order. Too late. The hunters turned on her. Hale fired wildly. One of her own fell, shot clean through the chest. Elena crossed the distance in a heartbeat, disarming Hale with brutal efficiency, wrenching the weapon from her grasp and slamming her into the steel floor. Rashad restrained the remaining loyalists, pinning them effortlessly, growling low and dangerous. The defectors knelt, one by one. We know what we are, the bleeding woman said hoarsely. But we know what you are too. Elena studied them for a long moment. Then she smiled. Slow, dangerous. You want protection? She asked. The woman nodded. You want truth? Yes. Elena's fangs descended. So be it. By dawn, the warehouse was empty. Those hunters who remained loyal were gone. Taken into vampire custody, their fates sealed in blood. Those who defected were being prepared for transformation, watched closely by ancient eyes that missed nothing. Mercer stood alone on the rooftop, the city stretching out beneath him as the sun crept over the horizon. The seal was quiet now, too quiet. Elena joined him, her presence steady, grounding. You crossed another threshold tonight. Mercer didn't look at her. I didn't mean to. No one ever does. Rashad approached, expression grave. The hunters have broken. Mercer exhaled slowly. Then something worse is coming. Elena's gaze turned toward the distant mountains. Yes, she said softly, because Dracula has been watching this entire time. Far away, In a place untouched by dawn, ancient eyes opened, and something smiled. Chapter 26. Awakenings. Pain was the first thing she felt. Not sharp pain. Not the familiar, manageable agony of broken bones or torn muscle. This pain was wrong. It was everywhere at once, inside her veins, inside her thoughts. An ancient pressure that felt less like injury and more like rewriting. As if her blood itself had been seized, dismantled, and rebuilt by something older than pain had any right to be. Sergeant Alina Voss woke choking. Her lungs convulsed violently, dragging in air she did not need. The reflex was automatic, human, desperate, but it was wrong. The breath burned, scraped, felt unnecessary. Her chest heaved anyway, again and again, until her heart stuttered once, twice, and then stopped. She felt it stop. The silence inside her was louder than any gunshot. Her body gasped anyway. Alina's eyes flew open. Darkness swallowed her vision for half a second before it fractured into detail so sharp it hurt. Red candlelight flared like open wounds against the black stone walls. Every shadow had depth. Every surface had texture. She could see dust motes drifting in the air, slow and deliberate, like falling snow. Stone surrounded her. Old stone, hand-carved, etched with symbols she knew too well. Vampire sigils, wards of secrecy, circles of containment. Her training screamed at her all at once. Holding chamber, ritual space, blood warded. She tried to move. Chains rattled. The sound was deafening. She froze, her entire body locking. A sensation flooded her nerves in violent waves. The cold of the metal burned. The weight of it was unbearable. Her skin crawled, as though something beneath it was trying to crawl out. Her body screamed wrong. Every sound was too loud. Water dripping somewhere beyond the chamber echoed like thunder in her skull. The flames of the candles flickered, and the movement alone was enough to make her flinch. The smell of stone, old blood, incense, and something sweet, too sweet, overwhelmed her senses. And then she heard it. Heartbeats, dozens of them, steady, slow, controlled. Each one struck her like a drumbeat inside her head. Her breath hitched. A sound escaped her throat, small, broken. A whimper. She froze. Her eyes widened in horror. I don't make noises like that. She had been a hunter for 15 years. She had stared down monsters without flinching. She had watched people die and learned to carry it without breaking. That sound didn't belong to her. Memory slammed into her without mercy. The warehouse, the blinding wave of force that had thrown bodies like toys. Mercer standing at the center of it, unchained, impossible. The seal exploding outward. Elena Vasquez stepping through the smoke like a queen descending a throne of ruin. And then, fangs, heat, darkness. Oh God, Elena whispered. Her voice echoed strangely, layered with something hollow beneath it, something that didn't quite match the shape of her words. Fear rose fast and sharp. Footsteps approached. She heard them long before they reached the door. Measured, unhurried, precise. No heartbeat accompanied them. The door opened without a sound. Elena Vasquez stepped inside. She looked exactly as Elena remembered. Immaculate, composed, wrapped in elegance and menace in equal measure. Her dark hair framed her face perfectly. Her crimson coat looked untouched by dust or age. But Elena's new senses betrayed something else entirely. Elena wasn't just standing there. She burned. Not with heat, but with presence. Power rolled off her in slow, controlled waves that made Elena's skin prickle and her instincts scream. The Vampire Queen was no longer just an enemy profile in a classified briefing. She was a force. "You're awake," Elena said gently. The softness of her voice made it worse. Elena jerked against the chains, panic exploding in her chest. "What did you do to me?" Her voice cracked on the last word. Elena tilted her head slightly, studying her like a physician observing a patient who had just survived something impossible. "I gave you a choice," Elena said calmly. "You accepted." Elena laughed. A sharp, broken sound. "I didn't understand. I didn't know what it would feel like. No one ever does." Elena replied softly. The words were not cruel. That terrified her. Elena swallowed. Her throat burned. Her tongue felt dry, swollen, as though it had been scraped raw. Something inside her twisted painfully. I'm hungry, she whispered. The word carried more weight than it should have. Felt like an admission of failure. Elena nodded once. Yes. The door opened again. A human stepped inside. Alive, breathing, warm. The scent of blood hit Elena like fire. Her vision tunneled instantly. The world collapsed into a single point. Into the rise and fall of the human's chest. Into the pulse beating visibly beneath their skin. Hunger detonated inside her. She screamed, "No, no, I can't. I won't." Her body betrayed her completely. Her muscles tensed. Her teeth ached. Her senses locked onto the human with predatory precision she had never known. The scent was intoxicating: salt, iron, life. Her hands strained against the chains, metal groaning. Elena's voice cut through the frenzy like a blade. "Look at me." Elena shook violently, fighting instincts that felt older than reason. Her vision blurred, tears streaming down her face. "You are not an animal," Elena said, stepping closer. "You are not lost. Breathe." "I was a hunter," Elena sobbed. "I hunted you. And now," Elena said quietly, "you will learn restraint." Elena raised her hand and sliced her own wrist without hesitation. Dark blood welled thick, ancient, humming with power. "Drink," Elena commanded. Elena hesitated, then instinct won. She drank. The effect was immediate. Power flooded her veins, drowning the hunger in something deeper. Control. The burning eased. The world sharpened, stabilized. She collapsed against the chains, sobbing. Elena stepped back, watching with an ancient, measured gaze. "This is your first dawn," the vampire queen said. "Survive it." Daniel Mercer stood outside the Colorado Springs Police Department and stared at the building like it might recognize him as a fraud. Same brick facade. Same flag snapping in the cold morning wind. Same faint smell of coffee, paper, and disinfectant drifting through the revolving doors. Nothing had changed. Everything has changed, he thought. The seal beneath his skin stirred faintly, responding to the density of humanity inside the building. Hundreds of heartbeats, lives colliding, choices stacking atop one another like loaded weapons. Mercer flexed his fingers. Human hands. Normal. Mostly. He stepped inside. "Mercer!" Officer Jake Hollins slapped him on the shoulder hard enough to rattle him. "Damn, man, you look like hell." Mercer forced a smile. "Miss me? You disappear for 2 days, internal affairs starts twitching," Jake said. "Captain wants a word." "Of course he does." As Mercer walked the halls, conversations quieted just a fraction too much. Eyes lingered. He could feel it. A subtle awareness brushing against his senses, as though something about him no longer fit the room. He passed a mirror. For half a second, his reflection lagged behind him. Mercer stopped. His pulse spiked. He stared. Blinking, he looked again. Normal. He exhaled slowly and kept walking. Captain Morales leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "You cleared for duty?" "Yes, sir." "You're not injured?" "No." "You're not suspended?" "No." Morales sighed. "Then why do I feel like I'm about to regret this?" Mercer met his gaze. "Because you always do?" Morales snorted. "Get out of my office." The radio crackled. Shots fired. South Nevada Avenue. Officer down. Mercer was already moving. The first bullet shattered the pawn shop's front window. Glass exploded inward in a violent spray, shards catching streetlight like frozen sparks. Civilians screamed as they scattered, boots pounding pavement, car doors slamming as people dove for cover. Mercer was already moving. He didn't think. He didn't hesitate. His body reacted before his mind caught up. Muscle memory layered with something else now, something older, deeper. "Shots fired!" Someone screamed into a radio. Automatic fire followed, ripping through the storefront in stuttering bursts. The sound echoed down South Nevada Avenue, bouncing off brick walls, rattling metal signs, triggering car alarms in a cascading wave of noise. Mercer slid behind a patrol cruiser as bullets sparked off the hood inches from his face. 2 suspects. Jake Hollins shouted from the opposite side of the street. Automatic weapons. Barricaded inside. Mercer closed his eyes for half a second. He could hear them. Inside the pawn shop, 2 heartbeats, wildly different. One spiked and panicked, hammering so fast it blurred. The other was calm, measured, cold. The calm one scared him more. Rear alley, Mercer said. There's movement. How do you... Jake started. Another burst of gunfire cut him off. Mercer broke cover and ran. Not fast. Too fast. The world seemed to stretch around him, edges sharpening, sound compressing. He cut through the alley in seconds, boots barely touching ground. A round ricocheted off brick behind him. Close enough he felt the heat of it. He reached the corner and froze. A child, 6 years old, maybe younger, curled behind a dumpster, eyes wide, hands clamped over her ears as gunfire thundered around her. She looked up at Mercer like he was an apparition. "Hey," he said softly, crouching. "You're okay. I've got you." Her heartbeat was frantic, fluttering like a trapped bird. The calm heartbeat inside the shop shifted. Aware, Mercer felt it turn toward him. Gunfire erupted again. Mercer didn't think. He turned his body, shielding the girl, and a bullet struck his shoulder. The impact knocked him back half a step. The pain didn't come. The bullet flattened against his vest like soft clay and fell to the ground with a dull clink. The girl stared at him, mouth open. Mercer stared at the bullet. Not here. Not now. He swallowed and forced a smile that felt brittle. "Stay behind me," he whispered. "Close your eyes." He stood. The alley seemed to narrow as he stepped forward, walking directly into the open street. More shots fired. Bullets struck him, chest, ribs, thigh. Each one flattened, fell, harmless. Someone screamed. Inside the pawn shop, the panicked heartbeat spiked into terror. The calm one hesitated. Mercer walked through the broken doorway as smoke curled around him. "Drop the weapons," he said. His voice carried. Not loud. Absolute. The calm heartbeat stuttered. The man with the rifle stared at Mercer like he was seeing a ghost. His hands trembled. The weapon lowered. The second man dropped his gun entirely and collapsed, sobbing. Sirens wailed closer. Mercer exhaled slowly. The seal beneath his skin burned. Not in pain, but in warning. "They saw you." When it was over, no one moved toward Mercer. They stared. Jake approached slowly, eyes flicking to the dented vest, the untouched skin beneath. "How the hell are you standing?" he asked quietly. Mercer met his gaze. Lucky day. But the lie rang hollow even to him. Across the street, a woman recorded everything on her phone. Mercer felt it. The seal tightened. By nightfall, the footage was everywhere. Grainy, shaky, incomplete, but enough. Social media exploded. Did that cop just walk through bullets? Body armor doesn't work like that. What the hell did I just watch? Mercer sat in his dark apartment, watching the city flicker beyond the window. His phone buzzed constantly. Texts from coworkers, voicemails from unknown numbers, missed calls from internal affairs. He ignored them all. The seal pulsed. Elena felt it the moment she crossed the city limits. "You broke concealment," she said, standing in his living room like she belonged there. "I saved a kid," Mercer replied, "and showed the world a miracle," Elena countered. "And miracles never stay miracles for long." Mercer leaned against the counter. "So what now?" Elena's expression hardened. "Now the hunters move faster. And Valeric." The room shuddered. Not an earthquake. Something deeper. The air grew cold. Elena turned sharply toward the window. "He's begun." Far beneath Black Hollow, Valeric stood before the fully open gate. The Forgotten had emerged, not in a rush, in procession. Each form carried remnants of armor, fragments of identity stripped away by centuries of exile. Their presence bent space subtly, warping shadows, muting sound. "These are the ones erased from myth," Valeric said reverently. "Not slain, not defeated." One stepped forward, tall, skeletal, eyes glowing faint blue. "Why now?" it asked. Valeric raised the crystal. "Because the lock has awakened." The Forgotten stirred. "Bring him to us," the entity said. Valeric smiled. He will come on his own. In a hidden facility beneath Denver, what remained of the hunters argued. He's not contained, one shouted. You saw the footage. He's a stabilizer. Alina Voss snapped back. Every time Mercer acts, disaster doesn't happen. Because he hasn't broken yet, Hale said coldly. And when he does, she stopped. The lights flickered. Every monitor went black. A single message appeared across all screens. The lock walks. The door opens. Hale's blood ran cold. Mercer felt them all at once. Hunters, vampires, werewolves, forgotten. The seal roared. Elena gripped his arm. Daniel, listen to me. You cannot keep pretending you're only a cop. Mercer looked at his hands, at the city, at the bloodless bullets lying in gutters below. I know, he said quietly. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains, though no storm showed on any radar. Deep beneath the earth, something ancient began to move. Vailric whispered into the darkness. Run if you wish, Daniel Mercer. The Forgotten smiled. We will follow. Chapter 27. When the world breaks quietly, the first city falls. It began at 3:17 a.m. Eastern Time. No sirens, no warning, no declaration of war. In Baltimore, power grids failed across 3 districts simultaneously. Traffic lights went dark. Cell towers dropped. Emergency lines flooded, not with reports of explosions, but with absence. People vanishing. Security footage later showed streets emptying without panic. Pedestrians pausing mid-step, heads tilting as if listening to something only they could hear, then simply stepping into shadow. In Chicago, the river froze in a single, impossible minute. Boats locked in place, bridges jammed, and beneath Lower Wacker Drive, something ancient walked through concrete as though it were fog. In Phoenix, the temperature dropped 40 degrees in under 10 minutes. Animals fled the desert. The stars above dimmed. In Denver, Denver screamed. Buildings shook as if struck by subterranean thunder. Cars stalled, the air filled with pressure that made lungs ache. Witnesses described figures emerging from alleyways and basements. Tall, thin silhouettes that bent light around themselves. The Forgotten had returned, and they were not attacking randomly. They were marking territory. Colorado Springs, 4:02 a.m. Daniel Mercer woke gasping. The seal beneath his skin burned like a brand freshly pressed. He rolled out of bed as his phone exploded with alerts. Emergency notifications, police bulletins, encrypted messages he wasn't supposed to have access to. Elena was already there. They've begun, she said simply. Mercer ran a hand through his hair. Where? Everywhere, she replied. Multiple states. Coordinated. Precise. Rashad's voice came through the speaker Elena had placed on the table. This is not war, the Werewolf King said grimly. This is demonstration. Mercer swallowed. Vailric. Yes, Elena said. But not only him. Mercer looked up sharply. The Forgotten. Elena nodded. They are announcing themselves, she said. And they are doing it in a way the world cannot ignore. The police radio crackled from Mercer's phone. All units, stand by. Federal authority taking command. Do not engage unknown entities. Repeat. Do not. The transmission cut off. Mercer's phone rang immediately after. Captain Morales. Mercer answered. Sir. Morales didn't waste time. Get dressed. We've been given orders. Mercer frowned. From who? There was a pause. Homeland Security, Morales said. And something calling itself continuity oversight. Mercer felt the seal tighten. What are the orders? He asked. Morales exhaled. You're being reassigned. Immediately. To where? Downtown. Custodial transfer. Mercer's jaw clenched. Custody of who? Morales hesitated. A vampire, he said. Name's Lucien Arkwright. Silence fell in Mercer's apartment. Elena's eyes went cold. Rashad growled through the speaker. Morales continued, voice strained. Federal task force claims he's connected to the events. They want him arrested, processed, and handed over. Mercer closed his eyes. Lucien Arkwright. He knew that name. An information broker. A neutral. Someone who had helped keep the city stable. He's not responsible, Mercer said. I don't care, Morales replied. These orders didn't come with debate. Mercer opened his eyes slowly. I'll bring him in, he said. Elena stared at him. Daniel. But I'm doing it my way. Lucien Arkwright's club sat beneath an abandoned theater, hidden behind layers of legal fronts and supernatural concealment. Tonight, none of it mattered. Federal vehicles surrounded the block. Black vans, armored trucks, unmarked SUVs. Men and women in tactical gear moved with practiced precision. Their weapons gleamed with silver-lined barrels and etched runes. Hunters. Mercer stepped out of his cruiser slowly, hands visible. A man in a dark suit approached, sharp haircut, colder eyes. Officer Mercer, the man said. Agent Collins. Continuity oversight. Mercer studied him. You're not DHS. Collins smiled thinly. We are when we need to be. You're arresting Arkwright under what charge? Conspiracy, Collins replied. Material support of non-human entities. Mercer's jaw tightened. You don't have jurisdiction. Collins leaned closer. You don't have a choice. Inside the club, Lucien waited calmly, sipping untouched whiskey. I wondered when they'd come, Lucien said when Mercer entered. Just hoped it wouldn't be you. Mercer kept his voice neutral. Lucien, you need to come with me. Lucien smiled faintly. And if I resist? Mercer met his gaze. Don't. Lucien studied Mercer for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. As Mercer cuffed him, Lucien leaned in. They're not afraid of me, Daniel. Mercer whispered back. I know. They're afraid of you. The cuffs clicked shut. Outside, the first scream echoed from 3 blocks away. The air collapsed. Not exploded, compressed. People dropped to their knees, clutching ears as pressure crushed inward. The hunters froze. Shadows thickened. A figure stepped from the darkness at the end of the street. Tall, impossibly thin, eyes glowing faintly blue. Another emerged behind it. Then another, weapons raised. Hold fire, Collins shouted. Too late. Silver rounds struck the first Forgotten. They passed through. The Forgotten tilted its head, then raised one hand. The street folded. Cars lifted, twisted, crushed like toys. A building's facade buckled inward, windows imploding. Hunters screamed. Mercer shoved Lucien behind a vehicle, the seal roaring as he raised his arms instinctively. Get down, Mercer shouted. Elena appeared beside him in a blur of motion, crimson eyes blazing. This was inevitable, she said grimly. Rashad's howl thundered from the mountains, echoing across the city. The Forgotten advanced. Lucien stared in awe and terror. Those aren't vampires. No, Elena said softly. They are what comes after. Collins screamed into his radio. Fall back, fall back. Several hunters obeyed. Others didn't. A sniper fired from a rooftop. The Forgotten looked up. The rooftop collapsed. Mercer felt something snap inside him. Not the seal, but restraint. He stepped forward. Enough! Mercer shouted. The word carried power. The Forgotten paused. Every eye turned to him. One stepped closer, its voice scraping like stone dragged across bone. Lockbearer, it said. You walk openly now. Mercer swallowed. This city isn't yours. No, it replied, but it will remember us. Turned and vanished. The pressure released. Sirens wailed. Buildings burned. Dozens lay injured. Lucien stared at Mercer. They recognized you. Elena touched Mercer's arm. Daniel. The world just changed. In New York, a Forgotten stood atop the Empire State Building. In Los Angeles, one walked the ocean floor. In Dallas, one whispered into the dreams of generals. Valric watched from Black Hollow, satisfied. They move without me now, he said. Good, a hooded figure asked. And Mercer? Valerick smiled. He will come to me, he said, because everyone else will come for him first. Back in Colorado Springs, Mercer stood amid flashing lights and broken streets. Collins approached, fury etched into his face. This is on you, he snarled. Mercer met his gaze without flinching. Then arrest me. Collins hesitated. He didn't. Lucien was released quietly, orders reversed without explanation. Elena leaned close to Mercer. You cannot remain a cop much longer. Mercer watched paramedics load the wounded. I know, he said. Above them, thunder rolled without clouds. Somewhere deep beneath the world, ancient things stirred. And Daniel Mercer, cop, werewolf, lock, anomaly, realized the line he'd been walking no longer existed. Only the fall. Chapter 28. No Safe Ground. The morning after, Colorado Springs woke up pretending nothing had happened. News anchors spoke carefully, using words like infrastructure anomaly and isolated incident. Footage was edited. Angles were cropped. Soundtracks softened the screams. Government spokespeople promised investigations. But the city knew. Mercer could feel it as he drove through downtown. An electric tension humming beneath the surface. People lingered at street corners longer than necessary. Conversations dropped into whispers when patrol cars passed. Every shadow felt watched. The seal beneath his skin throbbed in rhythm with the city's unease. You can't keep doing this, Elena said from the passenger seat. Mercer didn't look at her. Doing what? Standing in the open, she replied. Pretending the world hasn't noticed you. Lucien Arkwright sat in the back seat, hands folded neatly in his lap. She's right, detective. The illusion is broken. Mercer exhaled slowly. I didn't ask for this. Lucien smiled thinly. No one ever asks to become a symbol. The radio crackled. All units, be advised, federal task force now active citywide. Suspected non-human collaborators to be detained on site. Elena's eyes flashed crimson. They're not even hiding it anymore. Mercer tightened his grip on the wheel. They're scared. And scared humans, Lucien said softly, are far more dangerous than monsters. The call came 10 minutes later. Officer Mercer, dispatch said, voice strained. Captain Morales requests your immediate presence at headquarters. Elena stiffened. This is a mistake. Mercer nodded. Probably. Lucien leaned forward. If you walk into that building, there's a good chance you won't walk out. Mercer met his gaze in the rearview mirror. Then it's a good thing I don't plan on going alone. Colorado Springs Police Department felt different, heavier. Mercer sensed it the moment he stepped inside. Wards, crude but effective, had been etched discreetly into doorframes. Silver dust-lined ventilation grates. Cameras tracked him with unsettling precision. Hunters had been here. Captain Morales stood in the bullpen, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Daniel, he said quietly, you should have stayed home. Mercer scanned the room. Officers avoided his eyes. A pair of unfamiliar men in dark suits stood near the elevators, continuity oversight. Collins. Captain, Mercer said evenly. What's going on? Morales hesitated. Collins stepped forward. Officer Mercer, by authority of federal emergency statute. No, Morales snapped. This is still my house. Collins smiled thinly. For now. Morales turned back to Mercer. They're asking questions. About you. About last night. Mercer nodded. I figured. Collins interjected. You exhibited anomalous resistance to ballistic impact. Multiple witnesses. Video evidence. Lucien's voice echoed faintly from Mercer's memory. They're afraid of you. Morales lowered his voice. Daniel, tell me what's going on. Mercer met his eyes and told him the truth. Not all of it, but enough. Morales listened in silence, face draining of color. You're telling me, he said finally, that things we've been told don't exist just walked through my city. Yes, sir. And you're in the middle of it. Yes, sir. Morales looked away. Jesus Christ. Collins cleared his throat. Captain, with respect, This conversation is no longer internal. Morales turned sharply. Get out of my building. Collins didn't move. The lights flickered. Every phone buzzed simultaneously. Mercer felt it before he saw it. The Forgotten were close. The first explosion tore through the west entrance. Concrete shattered inward as a shockwave rippled through the lobby. Officers were thrown from their feet. Alarms screamed. Mercer moved instantly. Evacuate, he shouted. Now! Gunfire erupted outside, hunters engaging something they didn't understand. Elena appeared at his side, eyes blazing. They followed you. No, Mercer said grimly. They followed this place. A shadow slid through the smoke. Tall. Wrong. The Forgotten stepped inside the precinct. Time seemed to slow. Weapons were raised. The Forgotten looked at Mercer. Lockbearer, it said. You continue to choose the many. Mercer stepped forward. Get out of my city. The Forgotten tilted its head. This city is already changing. Rashad's howl thundered from outside as the Werewolf King crashed through a reinforced wall in full war form, scattering hunters like leaves. This ends now, Rashad roared. The Forgotten turned, intrigued. Another king, it murmured. How quaint. The air buckled. Mercer felt the seal surge, pain and power twisting together. Stop, Mercer shouted. The Forgotten paused again. Its gaze softened, not with mercy, but with curiosity. You are not ready, it said. But you will be. It dissolved into shadow. Silence fell. The precinct lay in ruins. Morales stared at Mercer, shaking. Get out, he whispered. Before they decide you're the enemy. Mercer swallowed. I already am. They regrouped in an abandoned rail tunnel beneath the city. Elena paced. Rashad stood guard. Lucian leaned against a pillar, pale but composed. They're escalating faster than Veilric predicted, Elena said. Lucian frowned. Or exactly as planned. Rashad's eyes glowed. This was a test. Mercer nodded. They wanted to see how far I'd go. And you chose humans, Elena said softly. Mercer met her gaze. I always will. Lucian sighed. That may be the problem. A presence pressed against Mercer's mind. Cold. Ancient. A voice not spoken, but remembered. You wear the lock but refuse the door. Mercer staggered. Elena caught him. Daniel. He looked up, eyes glowing faintly. They're not following Veilric anymore, Mercer whispered. He unleashed them. But he doesn't control them. Rashad snarled. Then who does? Mercer swallowed. They control him. Veilric stood alone now before the gate. The Forgotten had gone. The crystal in his hand cracked. He laughed softly. So, he murmured, you've chosen him. A whisper answered from the darkness. All locks break eventually. Veilric's smile faded. For the first time, something like fear crept into his eyes. Back in the tunnel, Mercer straightened. I can't keep pretending I'm just a cop, he said. Elena nodded. Then stop. Lucian tilted his head. What will you be instead? Mercer looked toward the city above them. Sirens, fear, people who had no idea how close the world was to tearing open. I'll be what stands in the way, he said. Thunder rolled overhead. Somewhere ancient things listened, and the war, no longer hidden, took its next breath. Colorado Springs had changed overnight. Windows reflected an unnatural red glow from emergency lighting, even when the sun was rising. Streets were littered with debris, broken glass sparkling like black diamonds in the morning haze. Emergency sirens wailed endlessly, a chorus of panic and alarm that Mercer could feel in his bones. He walked through downtown, uniform pressed, badge glinting, hands resting on his sidearm as though it could contain the chaos swirling around him. He moved carefully, alert to every flicker of shadow, every sudden movement. Morning, Daniel, Jake Hollins said from across the street, waving frantically as he ducked behind a police cruiser. His uniform was dusty, jacket torn along the shoulder, and his face was pale. It's bad out there. You're telling me, Mercer replied, voice low. His eyes swept every alley, every street corner. His senses were stretched. He could feel heartbeats beneath asphalt, smell tension in the air like copper. Hollins hesitated. lowering his voice. "They said the creatures are." "Don't say it," Mercer warned. "They're not your average animals. Not vampires, not werewolves, and not even what you think the Forgotten are." Hollins swallowed. "Then what are they?" Mercer didn't answer. He didn't need to. The street trembled beneath him as a distant explosion echoed, the glass from a shattered storefront scattering like deadly rain. Mercer's radio crackled. "All units, we have a 10 to 99. Suspect is armed, unknown threats. Multiple casualties reported at Civic Center and Pine Street." "Copy that," Mercer said. He vaulted into his cruiser, tires spinning over shattered pavement. "I'm en route." Within moments, the city was chaos incarnate. Civilians ran screaming as Mercer navigated the streets, siren cutting through panic. Flames licked the sides of buildings where the Forgotten had struck first. These weren't isolated attacks. They were coordinated, precise, and terrifyingly fast. He arrived at the Civic Center to find the plaza filled with shadows that moved with purpose. Half-formed, humanoid yet distinctly unnatural, the Forgotten were there in numbers, tearing through police barricades as though they were paper. Their limbs elongated in unnatural angles, faces blank yet vaguely familiar. A young officer screamed from behind a smashed patrol car. Mercer leapt from the vehicle, catching him by the collar. "Go! Get civilians out of here." I can't," the officer stammered. "There's..." A Forgotten lunged from the crowd, impossibly fast. Mercer caught it mid-strike, spinning the figure like a ragdoll before it could strike him. The air hissed as the creature's form rippled violently, reforming before him. "This isn't natural," Mercer muttered under his breath. The seal beneath his skin pulsed painfully. He could feel the city, the fear, the shifting lines of chaos. He could hear the creatures thinking in ways no human mind could process. The sound of wings and claws split the air. Rashad and the werewolf pack erupted from the treeline, teeth bared and fur bristling. They moved as a single organism, coordinated, devastating. With one synchronized lunge, the pack scattered the Forgotten, tearing through them like a storm. Mercer's enhanced senses picked up their fear, confusion, and raw power, but he noticed one thing immediately. The Forgotten weren't afraid. Elena appeared on the roof of the Civic Center, leaping with supernatural grace. Her crimson coat flared behind her, fangs flashing as she cut through a cluster of the Forgotten with precise arcs of her claws. Her eyes found Mercer, locking for a single moment. "Keep control," she mouthed. Mercer nodded. Control was everything. Every surge of the seal, every pulse of power had to be guided. One misstep, one burst of rage, and the city itself could die. Lucien appeared silently, moving through the crowd. His hands traced the air, sigils glowing faintly as he manipulated them to protect civilians and slow the Forgotten. He moved like a ghost in plain sight, his calm a sharp contrast to the chaos around them. "Daniel!" Rashad barked, leaping over a toppled statue. "We can't hold them forever. They're coordinating." Mercer's eyes scanned the plaza. The Forgotten were communicating without words, sending commands across space. He realized with a sickening certainty. They were sensing the seal. Every move he made, every pulse he emitted, was guiding them closer to their objective. A distant roar and the sharp report of firearms heralded the arrival of the hunters. They moved with efficiency that Mercer recognized immediately. Each step was planned, each strike measured. But he noticed something new. They weren't here to kill the Forgotten. They were here to contain. A woman in reinforced black armor raised her voice. "All units, align with the seal." Mercer's gut twisted. The hunters were attempting to harness the seal, possibly against him. "They've come for you," Elena hissed, landing beside him. Her claws flexed, her fangs bared. "Do not trust them." The hunters advanced in formation, ritual symbols glowing along the edges of their weapons. They fired specialized rounds at the Forgotten, which dissolved into smoke and shadow upon impact. "Daniel," one shouted, "we can stabilize this, but only if you submit to our guidance." Mercer clenched his jaw. "I'm not a tool." "Then we will remove you," another shouted. Before a bullet could reach him, Mercer twisted inhumanly fast, catching the projectile barehanded. It sizzled against his palm, dissolving into nothingness. His eyes glowed faintly as the seal responded to the threat, shielding him. The hunters hesitated. Some fell back. Some whispered to one another, doubt flickering across their faces. Far below the ruined city, in his subterranean command hall, Vaelric observed every feed simultaneously. Multiple states were under attack now: Los Angeles, Denver, Dallas, Chicago. The Forgotten were striking in synchronized precision, cities collapsing into chaos before local authorities could respond. Vaelric's crystal glowed as his smile widened. The lock-bearer is showing his hand, and now so will I. A hooded figure beside him spoke. Sir, the seal's power is destabilizing. He's beginning to manifest abilities faster than anticipated. Excellent, Vaelric said. He will awaken the potential, and when he does, he will do exactly as I planned. He turned to a massive steel door. Symbols older than the first language crawled across its surface. Phase 2, he said softly. Awaken the Forgotten Prime. The door trembled, and a low growl rolled from within. Something massive, ancient, and terrifying stirred. Vaelric smiled. The world will remember the name I give it, and the lock-bearer will either stand with me, or he will die watching it burn. Back in Colorado Springs, Mercer moved through streets that had become war zones. Cars were overturned. Fires raged from collapsed buildings. Children and families huddled beneath shattered structures. He could feel the Forgotten weaving through the crowds, avoiding direct engagement, herding people like livestock toward objectives he could not yet see. Daniel! Over here! Hollins shouted, dragging a small group of civilians from the wreckage of a collapsed diner. Move! Mercer barked, lifting the frightened group and tossing them onto his cruiser's hood as he rolled through the streets. Bullets and shadow struck around him, dissipating harmlessly against the seal's aura. A Forgotten appeared directly in front of him, its form taller, more humanoid than the others, eyes glowing faintly red. Daniel Mercer, it said, voice like whined through dead trees. The world bends beneath you. Choose or fall. Mercer's jaw clenched. I choose to protect. The creature's eyes flared. His body shuddered, and it disappeared. A warning, not an attack. Mercer arrived back at the Civic Center, where Elena, Rashad, and Lucian were holding the line. Daniel! Elena shouted. They're converging from all sides. He turned, seeing the Forgotten emerging from streets he had already cleared. I know, Rashad growled, swinging claws and fangs in deadly arcs. We can't hold them forever. Lucian traced runes along the ground, creating barriers of pale light that sizzled as the Forgotten hit them. He's not just sending them, he's shaping them. Mercer raised his hands, feeling the seal hum beneath his skin. The ground vibrated with the collective heartbeat of the city. He could feel every pulse of fear, every tremor of pain, every life at risk. I won't let them reach anyone else, he shouted. Energy erupted in waves from his chest, scattering the Forgotten and forcing them back. Elena's eyes widened. He's channeling it through the seal. Rashad barked a command. All units, push them back. Keep civilians safe. The plaza became a battlefield. Flashes of crimson, silver, and shadow colliding in a dance of carnage. Meanwhile, the hunters regrouped at the perimeter. This isn't containment anymore, one whispered. He's beyond control. Commander Hale stepped forward, jaw tight. Then we adapt. He is the lock-bearer. If we fail to act, the Forgotten will consume the city, and Vaelric will rise. Another hunter spoke. And if we act against him? Hale's eyes were steel. Then we pray the lock-bearer remembers his humanity. Far across the city, another Forgotten emerged, a towering figure that pulsed with dark energy. Mercer felt it immediately, older, stronger, ancient. It moved with precision, not mindless rage. Vaelric's voice echoed in Mercer's mind, carried by the seal. You think you protect them? I have already chosen the battlefield. The Forgotten Prime stood in the center of Civic Center Plaza, scanning, calculating, its red eyes locking on Mercer. He swallowed. The city was in his hands. The lives of thousands balanced on a knife's edge. Everyone, brace! Mercer shouted. Energy flared. Light collided with darkness. and the battle escalated beyond mortal comprehension. The Forgotten Prime moved forward. Mercer stepped into its path, and the war, fully unleashed, began in earnest.